My greedy son and his wife sold my $6 million ranch without my permission. When he handed me $20,000 and said, "Go die somewhere else," I burst out laughing. The look on their faces when they found out what was buried there was priceless. Yes, that's how my story begins. But before I tell you everything, let me first introduce myself. My name is Margaret Wilson, and I am 75 years old. I live in Texas, the wide land of ranches, cowboys, and secrets buried deeper than the roots of the oldest oak tree. And listen, before I continue, make sure you subscribe, like, and click the notification button for more upcoming stories that will shake your soul and make you think twice about family, greed, and life itself. Tell me, from which part of the country are you watching from? I really want to know, because my story touches everyone. Whether you are from New York, California, Texas like me, or even outside the US, this story is for you. Now let's go back to that moment. I sat in the living room of the ranch house that had been mine for over 40 years. My son, Daniel, and his wife, Melissa, stood in front of me with smug looks plastered on their faces. Daniel held out a white envelope stuffed with money. Exactly $20,000. "Here," he said coldly, tossing it on the table like it was a scrap of paper. "This is more than enough for you. We sold the ranch for $6 million. It's done. Go die somewhere else, Mom." Can you imagine? My own flesh and blood speaking to me like that? Melissa folded her arms across her chest, smirking. "You should be grateful we gave you anything at all. You're old. You don't need a ranch. You don't need money. What you need is a nursing home." I looked at them and instead of crying, instead of begging, I laughed. I laughed so hard my sides ached. They thought I was losing my mind. They thought they had one. But what they didn't know, what they could never have guessed, was that beneath that land, buried under the soil and hidden for decades, was something far more valuable than $6 million. Something that would make their greedy hearts stop cold when they found out. Their smiles vanished when I leaned back in my chair, still laughing, and whispered, "You two don't know what you've done." That's when their faces changed. First confusion, then a flicker of fear. And that was only the beginning. Now let me take you back to the start so you can understand how things got to this point. I wasn't always a rich ranch owner. No, I grew up poor on the outskirts of a small dusty town in Texas. My father worked with horses, and my mother cleaned houses for the wealthy. Life was tough, but we had pride, and we had something even more important: honesty. My father used to tell me, "Margaret, greed will destroy a family faster than fire will burn a barn." Back then, I didn't know how true his words would become. When I turned 23, I married my late husband, John Wilson. He was tall, strong, and had eyes that could calm the wildest horse. Together we built the ranch from scratch. We bought land, we raised cattle, and we worked side by side until our hands bled. The ranch became our dream, our pride, and our legacy. It was more than just a piece of land. It was a story written in sweat and tears. But life is never smooth, is it? We faced droughts, storms, financial struggles, and betrayals from neighbors who tried to cheat us out of land rights. Yet we stood firm. And then came the blessing: our son Daniel. At first, Daniel was the joy of my life. He was a bright boy, full of laughter and energy. But as he grew, something inside him began to change. He wasn't content with hard work like his father and me. No, Daniel had a taste for the easy life. He loved money, not because of what it could buy, but because of the power it gave him over others. By the time he married Melissa, who was as greedy as he was, I saw the storm clouds forming. She encouraged his worst habits: lavish spending, lying, cutting corners, and always chasing more. Still, I loved my son. A mother always loves her child, even when that child is walking down the path of destruction. But the years rolled by, and after my husband John passed away, Daniel and Melissa began circling me like vultures. "Mom, you're too old to run this ranch. Sell it and live comfortably. You don't need all this land." Those were their words over and over. But I refused. I wasn't going to sell the blood, sweat, and tears of a lifetime. And that's when the war began. At first, they tried sweet words, then manipulation, then pressure. And when none of that worked, they went behind my back. They forged my signature. They signed documents. They sold the ranch. And that brought us to that moment in my living room, with Daniel throwing $20,000 at me like a dog bone, and me laughing in his face. Because they didn't know. They didn't know about what John and I had hidden. They didn't know about the secret buried beneath the old oak tree at the far end of the ranch. And as they walked away from me that day, full of pride and arrogance, I whispered under my breath, "When you find it, may your greed choke you." But you see, dear viewers, life has a way of teaching lessons in the harshest of ways. And soon, very soon, Daniel and Melissa would learn that their $6 million deal had cost them something priceless. What was it that lay hidden beneath that soil? What secret did I and my late husband guard for decades? That is where the story truly begins. Because the day after they sold the ranch, something happened that none of us expected. Something that shook the entire town and sent whispers spreading like wildfire. And that is where I must leave you for now, because what happened next was the spark that set everything ablaze. The very next morning after Daniel and Melissa sold my ranch, the town was buzzing. You see, in a small Texas town, news travels faster than a prairie fire. Everyone knew the Wilson Ranch had been sold, and everyone had their opinions. Some people pitied me, saying, "Poor old Margaret, her boy cheated her." Others laughed behind closed doors, thinking I had finally lost control. But by noon that day, something happened that silenced all the whispers. The new owner of the ranch, a wealthy businessman from Dallas named Mr. Carter, had sent his men to begin cleaning up the land. They were digging near the far end of the property, close to the old oak tree where John and I used to sit every evening. That oak wasn't just any tree. It was our place of secrets, memories, and promises. I knew what lay buried there. And when I heard the sound of their machines rumbling toward it, my heart began to race. Later, I sat on my porch in town when Daniel came strutting up the walkway with Melissa clinging to his arm. He was smiling like a man who had conquered the world. "Well, Mom," he said proudly, "guess who's $6 million richer? Us. You should have listened years ago. You could have had a comfortable life instead of clinging to that dusty old ranch." Melissa snickered. "Don't worry, Margaret. When you run out of that $20,000, maybe we'll let you sleep in our garage." I looked at them both and simply said, "Do you even know what you've done?" They rolled their eyes, brushing me off like an annoying fly. But just as Daniel opened his mouth to taunt me again, his phone buzzed. He answered, and his smirk quickly disappeared. His face turned pale, his hand trembled, and he stammered into the phone. Melissa leaned closer, whispering, "What is it, honey?" When he hung up, he looked at me with wide eyes, as if seeing me for the first time. "Mom, they found something." I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. "Of course they did." Melissa frowned. "What do you mean, of course?" Daniel swallowed hard. "The workers were digging near the oak tree. They found a chest." The air grew still, heavy with silence. My laughter from the day before must have echoed in his memory, because I saw fear flicker across his face. "A chest?" Melissa repeated, her voice rising with excitement. Like treasure?" Daniel looked at me, his jaw tight, his greed already fighting with his fear. "Mom, what did you bury out there?" I didn't answer. I just gave him the same smile my husband once gave dishonest men when he knew something they didn't. And then, as if fate itself wanted to reveal the truth piece by piece, Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time he didn't speak. He just listened. And when he lowered the phone, he whispered, "They're opening it now." That was the moment his world and mine was about to change forever. Daniel's hands were trembling so badly he almost dropped his phone. Melissa, with her greedy eyes shining like a hawk that had just spotted prey, grabbed his arm. "Tell them not to touch it until we get there," she shouted. "Don't let those workers keep anything." Daniel nodded quickly and barked into the phone. "Seal it."
Nobody opens it till he arriva.
"Do you hear me? Not a soul touches it." When he hung up, Melissa spun toward me, her lips twitching with hunger. "So, Margaret, what's in that chest?" I didn't answer. Instead, I sipped the lukewarm tea in my cup and said softly, "John and I put that chest there before you two were even married. And whatever is inside, it was never meant for you." Daniel's face hardened. "Well, Mom, too bad. The ranch is ours now, and whatever's buried on it belongs to us." Melissa clapped her hands together like a child waiting for candy. This could be jewels, gold bars, antiques. Oh my God, Daniel, this could be worth more than the ranch itself. She was already dreaming of mansions, cars, and fancy clothes. I could see it in her eyes. But Daniel wasn't smiling. He kept glancing at me like he wanted answers, and the way his voice shook when he asked, "Is it dangerous?" told me he feared something far more than missing out on riches. I tilted my head, meeting his eyes. Greed can be dangerous, son. Very dangerous. That was all I said. They stormed off without another word, Melissa dragging him toward their shiny black truck. Dust rose behind their wheels as they sped toward the ranch. I stayed behind on the porch. I didn't need to be there to know what was happening. I could picture it all. The workers, curious and sweating in the hot Texas sun, had dug out the chest. It wasn't small either. It was the size of a large trunk, iron-banded and heavy with rust. Time had eaten away at the wood, but it was still intact. When I closed my eyes, I could see it as clearly as the day John and I buried it. It was 40 years ago. We had just finished paying off the ranch after years of hard work, and we were finally free from debts. John called me to the oak tree one night under a sky full of stars. There, he placed the chest on the ground and said, "Margaret, this chest holds everything we worked for, and something more. If ever our family loses its way, this will be the lesson that saves them." I asked him what he meant, but he only smiled and kissed my forehead. One day you'll see. That memory played in my head now, as though he were standing beside me. Hours passed before I saw Daniel's truck come flying back into town. Melissa jumped out first, her face red and sweaty, her hair wild. She looked like a woman who had seen both heaven and hell in the same breath. Daniel walked behind her, clutching a piece of folded paper in his hand. His face was pale, almost gray, and his eyes refused to meet mine. "Well?" I asked calmly, though my heart pounded against my ribs. Melissa shrieked, "You witch! You hid this from us. You!" Daniel silenced her with a sharp glance. He opened the paper with trembling fingers and shoved it toward me. It was a letter. My husband's handwriting. "To whoever finds this chest, know this. What lies inside is not for the greedy, the selfish, or the cruel. It is for the one who values family, honor, and sacrifice. If you are here out of greed, may what you discover be the weight that breaks your soul." Melissa snatched the letter from my hand and crumpled it. "Where's the money? Where's the gold? Where's the treasure?" she screamed. I stayed silent. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low and hoarse. "It wasn't money. Not at first. There were old deeds in the chest. Papers. Land titles." He paused, swallowing hard. "And a key." My breath caught. John's key. He had told me once there was another safe place, one even I didn't know about. Melissa didn't care about the meaning. She stomped her foot like a spoiled child. "That chest could have been full of millions, Daniel." "Millions." "Instead, it's just dusty papers and an old key." Daniel ignored her. His eyes were locked on me. "Mom, Dad left instructions. There's another place. Somewhere on the ranch." He took a deep breath. "And we're going to find it." Melissa's face brightened again. Her greed rekindled like dry wood catching fire. "Yes. That's it. The real treasure is still out there." I shook my head slowly. "You two never listen. That ranch is cursed for the greedy now. You sold it, and in doing so, you sold away your right to everything beneath it." Daniel slammed his fist against the porch railing. "We'll see about that." That night, they returned to the ranch with flashlights, shovels, and determination. The new owner, Mr. Carter, wasn't even aware of what was happening yet. He had only given workers orders to clear land. But Daniel and Melissa were desperate. I didn't follow them. Instead, I sat by my window staring at the night sky, remembering John's words. My heart told me that whatever came next would be the lesson my husband had promised. And I wasn't wrong. Around midnight, the town was shaken by a sound like thunder. Dogs barked, lights flicked on, and whispers filled the night air. It came from the ranch. Melissa's screams echoed through the fields, carrying all the way into town. And then silence. The next morning, people gathered at the edge of the ranch, whispering about the hole that had opened near the oak tree. Some said it was a sinkhole, others swore it was something worse. But I knew, because my husband had warned me long ago. that the land we built on was hiding not just treasure, but something deadly if disturbed. And Daniel and Melissa had disturbed it. By sunrise, half the town was gathered at the edge of my former ranch. Dust still lingered in the air, and men pointed toward the old oak tree where the ground had split wide open. I stood quietly among them, a shawl over my shoulders, watching the scene unfold. Nobody knew what exactly had happened during the night, but everyone had heard Melissa's piercing screams. And now Daniel and his wife were nowhere to be seen. Mr. Carter, the new owner, stood red-faced near the hole. He barked at his men. "Close this off. Fill it back in." But the workers shook their heads. One of them whispered loud enough for me to hear, "Sir, there are bones down there." A ripple of gasps ran through the crowd. Melissa staggered out from behind the oak tree at that moment, her face pale as chalk, her clothes torn. People rushed to her, but she pushed them away, screaming, "Don't go near it. Don't go near that hole." Her eyes were wide with terror, like she had seen death itself. I stepped forward slowly, my cane tapping against the dry soil. "Where's my son?" I asked. Melissa whipped her head toward me. Her lips quivered. He went down there. He wanted to see for himself. He hasn't come back up." Murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire. Some looked at me with pity, others with fear. Mr. Carter cursed under his breath and ordered a rope lowered into the pit. But before anyone could move, the ground shook. A low rumble echoed from beneath the earth, like the growl of some ancient beast. Dirt crumbled around the edges of the hole, and the oak tree itself leaned as if bowing to an invisible force. Then came the stench, a foul, rotten smell that made people cover their noses and back away. The workers dropped their tools and ran. Melissa clutched her head, wailing, "We shouldn't have opened it. We shouldn't have touched it." I stood my ground, my heart steady, because I knew what John had buried along with that chest. It wasn't just deeds or papers. No, he had once told me that the land our ranch sat on was older than the town itself, older than the records. The soil held things that should never be disturbed. Remains from a time of violence, betrayal, and blood. He said the earth had memory, and sometimes memory punishes. And now my greedy son had woken it. The crowd began to scatter as the rumbling grew louder. The hole widened, swallowing the edge of the oak tree. Melissa shrieked and tried to run, but her foot slipped in the loose dirt. She tumbled forward, her body sliding dangerously close to the pit. People shouted. Some reached for her, but the ground was breaking too fast. And then from deep within the hole a hand appeared, covered in dirt, shaking, reaching upward. It was Daniel, or at least it looked like him. The crowd gasped in unison. The dirt-streaked hand clawed at the edge of the pit, fingers curling into the soil like a desperate animal. Melissa screamed, falling backward in terror. "Daniel! Daniel, is that you?" The hand tightened its grip. Slowly, painfully, a head emerged from the shadows below. Hair matted with mud, skin ghostly pale under the rising sun. It was my son. But something about him made my stomach turn cold. His eyes, usually sharp with arrogance, now glowed faintly, as if reflecting a light from beneath the earth. His lips trembled, and when he finally pulled himself onto the surface, the crowd took several steps back. He was alive, but not the same. His clothes were shredded, his skin scratched raw as though he had clawed through stone. He collapsed on the ground, coughing up thick clumps of dirt and something darker, something that smelled of decay. Melissa crawled to him on her hands and knees. "Oh, thank God you're alive," she cried, clutching his shoulders. "You're safe." But Daniel didn't respond. His body shook violently, his breathing uneven. He turned his head slowly, his glowing eyes locking onto mine across the field. I felt a chill ripple through me. That wasn't my son looking at me. That was something else. The crowd whispered nervously. Some muttered prayers under their breath. Others backed away, murmuring, "It's unnatural, it's unholy." Mr. Carter barked, "Somebody get a doctor." But his voice shook. He too was afraid. Melissa held Daniel tightly, tears streaming down her face. "We'll get help. You'll be fine, darling." But then Daniel opened his mouth. No words came, only a guttural sound, like the groan of shifting earth. It rumbled from his chest and vibrated through the ground beneath us. Birds scattered from the oak tree, and the air grew heavy. Melissa froze, her grip loosening. Daniel, what's wrong with you? His head snapped toward her, too fast, too sharp. His glowing eyes widened, and for a split second, his mouth twisted into a grin that wasn't his. I clutched my cane tightly, my husband's words echoing in my mind. If ever greed drives our son, the land itself will teach him what it means to take without honor. Melissa tried to pull away, but Daniel's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with a strength that made her cry out in pain. Daniel, let go. You're hurting me, she screamed. But he didn't. He held her, his body shaking, his breath foul and heavy. The crowd shouted, some rushing forward. But when Daniel let out a roar that rattled the very air, everyone stumbled back in fear. I took a slow step forward, raising my voice above the panic. Daniel, I called, steady and firm. Look at me. His glowing eyes shifted to me again. For a moment, the monster inside him wavered. His lips trembled, his breathing slowed, and I saw a flicker of my boy. My little boy who once ran barefoot across this land, laughing in the sun. But then Melissa screamed again, and the flicker was gone. With a sudden, violent motion, Daniel shoved her backward. She tumbled onto the dirt, her head striking a rock with a sickening crack. The crowd gasped, some women covering their mouths in horror. Melissa lay motionless, blood trickling down her temple. Daniel staggered to his feet, swaying like a man caught between two worlds. He turned in circles, clutching his head, groaning in that guttural, unnatural voice. The ground beneath the oak tree shook again. The pit widened, dirt collapsing inward, swallowing roots and grass. From its depths came the faint sound of whispers, thousands of voices murmuring all at once. Children began to cry. Parents pulled them away, shouting for everyone to leave. Mr. Carter backed up, muttering curses, his face pale as chalk. But I didn't move. I stood firm, leaning on my cane, my eyes locked on my son. Daniel, I said softly, though the crowd was in chaos. You must fight it. You must remember who you are. Remember your father. Remember the ranch. He froze. His glowing eyes flickered. His lips parted, and for the first time words came out. Mother. The crowd hushed instantly. Even the whispers from the pit seemed to pause. Melissa groaned weakly from the ground, her hand twitching. I stepped closer, my cane sinking slightly into the trembling soil. Yes, Daniel. I'm here. But you must choose. The land is inside you now. If you give yourself to greed again, it will consume you. His chest rose and fell rapidly. Sweat poured down his face. His hands trembled. For a second he looked like a man trapped in chains fighting to break free. Then, without warning, his gaze snapped toward the hole. The whispers surged louder. And like a puppet pulled by invisible strings, Daniel staggered toward it. No! Melissa screamed, crawling after him despite her injury. Don't leave me! But Daniel didn't stop. His steps were clumsy, but the earth seemed to guide him, pulling him toward the darkness. The crowd shouted in panic, some begging him to stop, others running away entirely. I moved as fast as my frail body allowed, thrusting my cane into the ground to steady myself. Daniel, listen to me. That hole is death. He reached the edge of the pit. The whispers grew deafening, swirling around him like a storm. His hair blew in a wind that came from nowhere, and his body trembled violently. Melissa clung to his leg, sobbing. Don't do this. Don't leave me. For a heartbeat, Daniel looked down at her. His glowing eyes softened, just slightly. He opened his mouth, and his voice cracked, human again for one breath. Forgive me. Then, with a violent lurch, he threw himself into the pit. Melissa shrieked, reaching out, but he vanished into the darkness below. The ground shook once more, then stilled. The whispers faded. The crowd was silent. All that remained was the gaping hole where my son had stood. And then, from deep inside, a roar erupted, so loud it rattled windows in the town and sent birds scattering for miles. The hole began to glow faintly, as if something far older and far more dangerous had just awakened. The crowd fled in terror. Melissa collapsed on the ground, sobbing hysterically. And I stood there, clutching my cane, my husband's words echoing in my ears. If greed consumes him, the land will take him. But if the land awakens, Margaret, God help us all. The glow grew brighter. The oak tree, my oak tree, groaned and split in half, crashing to the ground. From the pit rose a wind that smelled of ash and blood. And then, with a voice that wasn't Daniel's but sounded through him, the land spoke. The debt is not yet paid. The ground pulsed like a living heart. That voice, deep, ancient, rolling up from the pit through Daniel's vanished body, echoed across the field. The debt is not yet paid. The townsfolk who hadn't fled dropped to their knees, some praying, others screaming. Mr. Carter shouted for everyone to clear out, but even his men refused to stay another minute. They threw down their tools and ran, leaving him red-faced and trembling. Melissa, still sprawled on the dirt, clutched her chest, sobbing. Debt? What debt? We don't owe anything. We just wanted. Her words caught in her throat as the glowing pit flared brighter. I knew. I had always known. John had told me years ago, late one night when we sat under that oak tree. He'd confessed that the land we bought wasn't just land. Long before it was ours, it had belonged to others, families who spilled blood over it. Betrayals, killings, greed, all buried beneath the soil. John said the land remembers. That's why he buried the chest, not just with deeds and titles, but with prayers, hoping it would keep the earth at peace. But Daniel's greed had broken that peace. Melissa's cries pierced the air. She crawled toward me on her hands and knees, her face streaked with blood and dirt. Margaret, you knew this was here, and you didn't stop us. What have you done to him? I looked down at her, steady though my heart was breaking. No, Melissa. What have you done to yourselves? You and Daniel chose greed, and the land always collects its price. She screamed, pounding her fists against the soil. I won't accept this. He's mine. Bring him back. The pit answered her, not with Daniel's voice but with 1,000 whispers, rising like a storm. The debt is not yet paid. The ground shook harder. Cracks spread outward from the hole, racing across the ranch like lightning strikes. One split the earth right between Melissa and me. She gasped, scrambling backward, but her foot slipped into the widening crack. She shrieked, grabbing for anything, her hands clawing at the dirt. The townsfolk cried out, but no one dared to approach. Even Mr. Carter stumbled back, pale as death. Melissa's eyes met mine, wild with terror. Help me. Please help me. I reached my cane toward her, my body trembling, but before I could touch her, the earth beneath her gave way completely. With one last scream, she was swallowed by the land. The ground sealed over her in an instant, leaving nothing but silence. The pit glowed brighter, the whispers louder, and I realized with horror, this wasn't finished. Daniel and Melissa were only the beginning. And as the oak tree's last roots tore free and collapsed into the pit, the voice rose again, clearer, sharper. The debt belongs to the bloodline. The air was thick with dust, smoke, and fear. The oak tree that had stood for generations now lay in ruins, split down the middle like the very earth had judged it guilty. The glow from the pit painted the land in ghostly light, and the whispers, the terrible endless whispers, wrapped themselves around every ear left standing. The debt belongs to the bloodline. The word struck me like a hammer. I clutched my cane tighter, my knees weakening under their weight. My son Daniel had been swallowed. My daughter-in-law Melissa had just been devoured by the land itself. And yet the voice, this ancient curse, was not satisfied. It wanted more. I felt the eyes of the crowd on me. Mothers shielding their children. Men whispering in fear. Mr. Carter standing frozen with his fists clenched. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If the debt belonged to the bloodline, then it was coming for me. The ground went still again, the glow pulsing like a dying fire. For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the labored breaths of the few who had stayed behind. And then I heard it, a low groan, not from the earth this time, but from memory. My husband John's voice, echoing across decades. Margaret, if ever the land calls for its debt, it will come for us. For you, for me, for Daniel. But there is one chance to make it right. I closed my eyes, the memory sharp and clear. It had been years ago, a night heavy with rain. John had come inside, dripping wet from the storm, his face pale as death. He told me then about the deal he'd struck long before we married. He had been young and desperate, trying to secure the ranch when the bank threatened to take everything. A stranger had come to him, an old man bent and thin, with eyes black as coal. The man told John the land could be his, if he promised to keep the balance. What balance? I had asked, horrified. John's face had been shadowed by candlelight when he whispered, "The land is blood. It remembers blood. It demands blood." I had shivered, thinking he was speaking nonsense. But he swore the man was no ordinary stranger. He said the papers that gave us full claim to the land came from that meeting. He said the old man told him, "This ranch will flourish, but when greed taints your line, the land will take it back." That was the debt. That was the curse. Now here I was, standing on the broken soil, my son and his wife claimed, the whisper still calling. The crowd began to murmur again. "It's her," one man hissed. "It wants her next." "Lord have mercy," a woman cried, clutching her child. "She's cursed." Mr. Carter turned on me, his voice trembling with both fear and anger. "What did you know about this, Margaret? You knew something was buried here. You knew this land was tainted, didn't you?" I didn't answer him. My eyes stayed fixed on the pit, because I could feel it. The pull, the demand. The curse wasn't done. Melissa's scream still rang in my ears. Daniel's glowing eyes haunted me. And now the land wanted me too. But I wasn't ready to give in. I raised my cane and pointed it at the pit. "If you want me," I said aloud, my voice shaking but strong enough for everyone to hear, "then you'll hear my terms first." The whisper stopped. For one terrifying moment, the silence was worse than the noise. The crowd held its breath, and even the birds that had circled overhead were gone. Then the voice returned, deeper, sharper, rolling like thunder. "The debt cannot be bargained." I squared my shoulders, though my 75-year-old bones ached. "I am the last of this line now. You've taken my son. You've taken his wife. You want me? Fine. But before you drag me down into your pit, you will tell me why. You will tell me the truth of this debt." The ground rumbled beneath my feet. Dust rose in clouds. And then, from the glowing pit, images began to form, shapes flickering like firelight on the walls of a cave. The crowd gasped as shadows danced across the soil, telling a story older than any of us. I saw men in cowboy hats, pistols at their sides, blood on their hands. I saw native families driven from the land, their homes burned, their voices silenced. I saw betrayal, neighbors turning on neighbors, brothers striking brothers for the claim of this soil. And then I saw the old man John had described, the black-eyed stranger. He walked among the bodies, touching the ground with his cane, whispering words I couldn't understand. The earth swallowed the blood, drank it like water, and glowed faintly just as it did now. The voice boomed. "This land was bought with betrayal. Its soil remembers injustice. Its roots demand repayment. Your bloodline prospered while others suffered. The debt belongs to you." Gasps spread through the crowd. The story was clear. Our family had not been blessed by hard work alone. No, the ranch had grown strong because it was fed by blood that was never ours to spill. Tears stung my eyes. My husband had carried this truth in silence. And now it had come for us. The whispers rose again, faster, sharper, overlapping until they became a single terrible chant. "Blood for blood. Blood for blood. Blood for blood." The ground cracked wider, splitting toward where I stood. Dust and smoke rose in a choking cloud. Someone screamed, "It's taking her." I felt the soil crumbling beneath my feet, my cane sinking as the earth tried to drag me down. Hands grabbed at my arms, two townsfolk, their faces desperate. "Hold on, Margaret," they shouted, but the pull was too strong. The pit glowed so bright it burned my eyes. The whispers grew deafening. My knees buckled. My body tilted forward toward the gaping hole. And then, just as I thought I would be swallowed whole, the earth stopped. The whispers silenced. The glow dimmed. Everyone froze. From deep within the pit, a single voice rose, Daniel's voice. "Mother," it called, weak and trembling. "Come down. Join me. Pay the debt with me." The crowd gasped. Melissa's voice followed, broken and distorted. "Yes, Margaret. It's your turn. It's your blood now." My cane slipped from my hands. My body trembled. The land wasn't just demanding repayment, it was calling me by name, through the voices of the ones it had already taken. And as I stared into the pit, the earth cracked one final time, wide enough for a shape to emerge. Something was climbing out. The crowd pressed backward as the ground heaved once more. From the glowing pit, a figure rose, dragging itself up with slow, deliberate movements. The air turned cold despite the Texas heat, a chill that made every hair on my body stand on end. First it looked like a man. Broad shoulders, tall frame covered in dirt. But as more of it emerged, gasps erupted from the onlookers. Its face, oh its face, was not whole. The skin was torn and cracked like dry soil. Its eyes glowing faintly with the same light that had burned in Daniel's. Its jaw shifted oddly as if broken, yet it grinned wide with teeth too sharp, too many. Melissa's voice echoed from its mouth, though her body had been swallowed hours before. You see us, Margaret. We are one now. We are the debt. Then Daniel's voice overlapped hers, groaning through the same mouth. Join us, mother, come down. The townsfolk screamed. Some fled into the distance, while others crossed themselves, whispering frantic prayers. Mr. Carter stood frozen in place, his lips trembling. What in God's name is that? I couldn't speak. My heart pounded so loud it drowned everything else. My son and his wife, twisted, merged, their souls imprisoned in this abomination, were reaching for me. The figure stretched its arm outward. Its fingers were long, too long, bending like roots clawing through the soil. Dirt fell from its body as it climbed fully free of the pit, towering above us all. The whispers surged again, voices of the betrayed, the dead, the forgotten, all crying together. Blood for blood. The debt must be paid. The figure took one step toward me, and the ground shook beneath its weight. My cane lay on the dirt where I had dropped it. I bent slowly to grab it, my old hands trembling but steady enough to lift it once more. I raised my chin and stared at the thing that had once been my son. If it is me you want, I whispered, my voice cracking yet firm, then take me. But you will not touch this town. The creature froze. Its glowing eyes bore into me. For a heartbeat the whispers went silent. Then with a guttural laugh that was both Daniel and Melissa and neither, it hissed. We want more than you, Margaret. We want all who carry the name Wilson. And in that moment my blood ran cold. Because I remembered something I had buried deep in my memory. Something worse than Daniel's greed or Melissa's cruelty. I wasn't the only Wilson left. The creature's words cut through me like a blade. We want all who carry the name Wilson. All. The crowd murmured, shifting nervously, their fear climbing higher. Some looked at me with pity, others with suspicion, as though my very existence had cursed them. And in that dreadful silence, a memory I had buried long ago came rushing back. My granddaughter. Emily. She was only 12 the last time I saw her. Daniel's daughter from his first marriage, long before Melissa. Her mother had taken her away after the divorce, wanting nothing to do with Daniel's greed or our land. They'd moved to another state, far from this cursed soil. I had never spoken of Emily again, not even to John before he passed. But she was alive. And she was a Wilson. The creature's glowing eyes seemed to pierce straight into my mind, dragging Emily's image from my heart. Its cracked lips curled in that horrible grin. Yes, it whispered, its voice carrying Daniel's and Melissa's tones together. The girl. The bloodline continues. We will have her. A scream tore from my throat before I could stop it. No. The townsfolk gasped, realizing the truth. There was more family left. Murmurs rose like buzzing bees. She has a granddaughter. The curse isn't done. That poor child. Mr. Carter stepped forward, his face pale as paper. Margaret, he said, his voice hard. Is it true? There's another Wilson. I turned away, shame burning in my chest. She has nothing to do with this. Leave her out of it. But the creature slammed its root-like hand into the ground, and the soil cracked open in a jagged line that raced toward us. The earth bucked, sending people tumbling, dust clouding the air. The whispers rose again, furious and unrelenting. The debt belongs to the bloodline. It must be paid in full. The people fled in chaos, scattering across the ranch like frightened cattle. Mothers carried children. Men dragged their wives. And even the bravest townsfolk could not stand against the unholy thing that had risen from the pit. I stood rooted to the ground, cane shaking in my hand, my heart breaking. Emily. Sweet Emily. She had been my only light in the darkness of Daniel's cruelty. She used to run to me with her little arms outstretched, her hair tied in ribbons, asking me to tell her stories of the ranch. She had loved the animals, the trees, the wildflowers. She had been innocent. And now, because of her father's greed, the curse was coming for her too. Mr. Carter grabbed my arm, shaking me hard enough to rattle my bones. Where is she, Margaret? Where's the girl? If we know where she is, maybe we can stop this thing. I yanked free, my voice low and furious. You think I'll tell you so you can use her? No. She's a child. She doesn't deserve this. He glared at me, sweat dripping down his forehead. If you don't tell us, that monster will rip apart this whole town trying to find her. Do you want that blood on your hands too? The creature roared, a sound like rocks grinding together, and stepped closer. Each movement made the earth tremble. Its form was shifting now, stretching taller, its limbs lengthening as though the soil itself was building its body. Daniel's face flickered in and out of view. Melissa's voice blending with the chorus of whispers. Bring the child. It demanded. Or we will take her ourselves. The crowd was nearly gone, but a few brave men lingered, clutching their rifles, though I knew bullets were useless here. One of them shouted, if this curse spreads to the next state, we're all doomed. We need to find the girl before it does. Their eyes turned to me again, sharp and accusing. It hit me then. They weren't just afraid of the creature. They were afraid of me. To them, I wasn't Margaret, the old woman who'd lived among them for decades. I was the carrier of the curse. I was the reason this nightmare was happening. I raised my cane high, striking the ground with all the strength left in me. Listen to me. I shouted, my voice breaking through the fear. You will not touch my granddaughter. She is innocent. This is between me and the land, no one else. The whispers quieted, as though the earth itself was listening. The creature tilted its head, its glowing eyes fixed on me. Mr. Carter sneered. And what are you going to do, Margaret? You're one old woman. You can't fight that thing. You can't outrun it. So unless you plan to sacrifice yourself right here and now, the girl's fate is sealed. Tears blurred my vision, but I stood tall, cane steady in my hand. Then I'll find another way. I'll give the land what it wants without damning Emily. The creature's grin widened. Another way? There is none. The debt is blood. The debt is eternal. Its long fingers reached toward me again, curling like claws. I braced myself, ready for the earth to open beneath me, ready for the pull that would drag me down. But instead of the ground splitting, something else happened. The pit glowed brighter than ever, searing against the night sky, and from its depths came a sound so strange it froze everyone in place. It was not a whisper this time, nor a roar. It was a child's laughter. High, soft, haunting. The crowd gasped. I clutched my chest. The laughter was familiar. Too familiar. Emily's laughter. The creature's head tilted sharply as if listening. Then it began to laugh too, the same high, childlike sound spilling from its cracked lips, echoing across the ranch. My knees nearly buckled. They had found her. Though she was far away, the curse had reached across the miles, dragging her innocent voice into this nightmare. The crowd fled completely then, terror driving them from the ranch. Even Mr. Carter stumbled back, muttering curses as he ran. Only I remained, standing in the glow of the pit, trembling, tears running freely down my face. The creature leaned closer, its face inches from mine, its breath cold as winter. She is waiting, Margaret, it hissed. Bring her home, or we will come for her ourselves. And before I could answer, its long, root-like arms shot into the ground, vanishing deep into the earth. The soil quaked as though something was tunneling far, far away, toward her, toward Emily. I screamed into the night, my voice raw and desperate. No. Leave her alone. But the earth swallowed the sound. And in that moment I knew, if I didn't stop this curse soon, it would take the only piece of my family I had left. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, knowing the curse was already reaching for Emily? Every creak of the ranch house felt like a whisper. Every gust of wind like her laughter echoing from far away. By dawn, the town had turned against me. Word had spread fast. When I walked down Main Street with my cane, doors shut, blinds dropped, and whispers followed me like shadows. There she is, the cursed one. Her family brought this on us. She'll lead that monster right to our children. I kept my head high, though every word cut deeper than a knife. They didn't understand. The curse wanted my bloodline, not theirs. But fear twists people's minds, and fear was all they had left. At the general store, I tried to buy supplies for the journey. Rope, matches, dried food, whatever I could carry. But when I placed my money on the counter, the storekeeper pushed it back, his hands trembling. "I can't take this," he muttered. "Not from you. Folks say if I help you, that thing will come for me too." I swallowed my pride and left my basket empty. Only one person dared stop me as I limped toward the edge of town, Mr. Carter. His face was pale, his hat pulled low, but his eyes burned with something between pity and anger. "You're going after her, aren't you?" he asked. "I have no choice," I said. My voice cracked, but I steadied it. "She's all I have left." He studied me for a long moment, then shook his head. "Margaret, if you bring that girl back here, you'll doom us all. That thing will follow. And if it takes her, there'll be nothing left to stop it." I leaned close, my cane tapping the dirt between us. "It's not the town's place to decide her fate. She's my blood, my granddaughter. And I'll die before I let the land swallow her." His jaw tightened. "Then you may get your wish." With that, he walked away, leaving me alone on the dusty road. The sun beat down as I started toward the station. Emily was hundreds of miles away, but I knew I had to reach her before the curse did. My legs ached, my body weary, but determination carried me forward. Then, just as I reached the crossroads outside town, the ground beneath me shuddered. A crack split across the dirt, racing past my feet like a serpent. I stumbled back as dust rose in a choking cloud. From the earth came a voice, faint but clear. Emily's voice. "Grandma, help me." The sound froze my blood. She was already caught in its grip. And then, in the settling dust, I saw something that made my heart stop. A small shoe, Emily's shoe, lay half buried in the soil at my feet. The little shoe sat in the dirt like a mocking gift, half buried but unmistakably hers. Pink canvas, scuffed toe, one lace frayed. Emily's shoe. My breath caught in my chest. She was hundreds of miles away. There was no reason, no earthly reason, why her shoe should be here, at my feet, on this cracked road outside town. I bent slowly, my knees screaming in protest, and lifted it into my shaking hands. Dust clung to the fabric, but it was warm, as though she had only just taken it off. "Grandma, help me." Her voice whispered again, faint but clear, carried up from the crack in the earth. I pressed the shoe to my chest, my heart pounding so hard I thought my ribs might snap. She wasn't safe anymore. The curse wasn't waiting for me to bring her here. It was dragging her toward us. The ground rumbled beneath my feet. The crack widened, glowing faintly with that same eerie light from the pit on the ranch. I stumbled back, clutching the shoe, as a vision rose from the soil. Emily, my sweet girl, appeared before me in a haze of smoke. She was barefoot now, her little dress torn, her face pale. Her eyes looked at me with terror. "Grandma, they're pulling me," she whispered. Her small hands reached out, but her body was half shrouded in shadow, as though unseen hands were dragging her backward. I can't stop them." Tears burned my eyes. "Emily, hold on, baby. I'm coming for you. Just hold on." The vision flickered like a dying flame, her figure stretching and fading until the ground sealed shut again. The dust settled, leaving me alone on the road with nothing but her shoe in my hand. I sank to my knees, clutching it, rocking back and forth as sobs shook my chest. I was 75 years old, weak and weary, but in that moment I swore I would not let her be taken. "Not you," I whispered to the sky. "Not her. You've taken enough." The wind shifted. From behind me came the sound of footsteps. I turned to see 3 townsmen standing at the edge of the road, rifles slung across their shoulders. Their faces were grim, their eyes cold. "You've doomed us all, Margaret," the tallest one said. His voice carried the weight of fear disguised as anger. "First your boy, then his wife. Now that thing wants your granddaughter too. If she's dragged here, the whole county could fall." "She's just a child," I said, rising slowly, clutching my cane and the shoe. My voice cracked, but I forced it steady. "You will not harm her." Another man spat in the dirt. If we find her first, maybe the land will be satisfied. Maybe it'll end this curse. I tightened my grip on the shoe until my knuckles turned white. If any of you lay a finger on her, the land won't need to punish you. I will. They sneered, but none of them dared move closer. Perhaps they saw the fire in my eyes, or perhaps they were too afraid of the curse itself. With muttered curses, they turned and stalked back toward town. I stood alone again, my chest heaving. The shoe weighed heavy in my hand, as though carrying not just Emily's innocence but the full burden of the curse. I had no choice. I couldn't wait for the land to drag her here piece by piece. I had to reach her first. But how? I had no car, no money, no supplies. And even if I did, what could I, a frail old woman, do against the ancient hunger of the earth? I turned the shoe over in my hand. Something scratched against my palm. Inside, tucked beneath the torn sole, was a scrap of paper. My heart skipped. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it. On it, scrawled in a messy child's handwriting, were the words, "Grandma, they know where I am. Please come." The letters were smudged, the ink shaky, as if she'd written it while being pulled. How it got into the shoe, I didn't know. But it was proof. Emily was fighting, trying to reach me. I pressed the note to my lips, closing my eyes. "I'm coming, baby. Just hold on. I'll find you before they do." The wind picked up, carrying with it faint whispers. "Blood for blood, blood for blood." I gritted my teeth. "If it's blood you want, then you'll have mine before hers." I turned toward the ranch. There was one place I hadn't gone since this nightmare began. The old cellar beneath the house. John used to keep it locked, warning me never to open it. I had assumed it was for tools or supplies. But now I wondered if he had hidden something there. Something that could fight the curse. The walk back was long, my body aching with every step. By the time I reached the ranch, the sun was sinking low, painting the sky blood red. The pit in the field still glowed faintly, though the creature was nowhere in sight. I hobbled to the house, the shoe tucked safely in my apron. My hands shook as I pulled up the rug in the kitchen, revealing the trapdoor I hadn't touched in decades. Dust filled the air as I forced it open, the hinges groaning in protest. The cellar yawned below, dark and cold, smelling of earth and secrets. I lit a lantern and climbed down the creaking steps. At first, I saw only shelves of jars, rusted tools, and old boxes. But then, against the far wall, I spotted something that froze my blood. A chest. Not the one buried under the oak. Another chest. Smaller, iron-bound, with strange carvings etched into its surface. The symbols pulsed faintly with the same eerie light as the pit outside. My cane clattered to the floor as I stumbled toward it. My husband's voice echoed in my memory. "If the debt ever comes due, there is one chance to make it right." With trembling hands, I touched the chest. It was warm. Too warm for something buried in the cold cellar. My fingers traced the carvings, symbols I didn't understand, but they felt alive under my skin. And then from inside the chest came a sound. A heartbeat. Slow, steady, loud. I staggered back, clutching the lantern. The chest throbbed with life, as though something inside it was waiting. Something powerful, something dangerous. The whispers filled the cellar, louder now, surrounding me. "Blood for blood, blood for blood." And then, clear as day, John's voice rose from the chest. "Margaret, if you open this, there's no turning back." The cellar air pressed heavy on my chest, the lantern flickering as if it too feared what lay inside the iron-bound box. John's voice echoed again, faint but unmistakable. "Margaret, if you open this, there's no turning back." My cane lay forgotten on the floor, Emily's little shoe clutched tight in my other hand. I stared at the chest, my heart beating in rhythm with the pounding inside it. A steady thud like a living heart trapped within. I whispered into the darkness, "John, if you left this for me, then you knew this day would come." The carvings pulsed brighter beneath my fingers as I knelt before the chest. Symbols I couldn't read but felt deep in my bones. They burned cold, like ice pressed against my skin. The latch groaned as I forced it open. The air shifted instantly, warmer, heavier, as though the earth itself held its breath. Inside lay bundles of yellowed papers, brittle with age, tied in leather string. Beneath them, wrapped in black cloth, was a dagger. Its blade shimmered faintly with that same unnatural glow, its hilt carved with the same symbols etched into the chest. And resting beside it, a book. Not a Bible. Not a journal. Something older. Its cover was made of cracked leather, bound with iron clasps. When I touched it, the whispers around me grew louder, almost frantic, as if warning me not to continue. But I had come too far to stop. I lifted the book, my hands trembling. On the first page, in John's handwriting, were the words, "To Margaret. If the land calls for its debt, this is your only chance." My breath caught. I turned the page. His notes filled the margins, frantic scrawls of a man who had lived in fear for decades. The debt is old. Older than us. The land remembers betrayal. But it can be bound. Not broken bound. The blade carries the binding. But only blood of the line can wield it. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Blood of the line. That meant me. Or Emily. The lantern flickered wildly, shadows stretching long across the cellar walls. Then faintly I heard it again. Emily's voice drifting up from the earth. "Grandma, they're coming closer. Please." I clutched the dagger, its weight solid and cold in my hand. My reflection shimmered in the glowing blade, and for the first time, I didn't see a frail old woman. I saw someone willing to fight. The whispers surged, angrier now, shaking the shelves, rattling the jars until they shattered on the floor. The ground trembled beneath me. Dust rained from the ceiling. From above I heard it. The groaning of the pit outside. The roar of the creature as it stirred again. The cellar shook violently, lantern swinging. John's voice whispered one last time from the chest. "Choose quickly, Margaret. Your blood or hers." The dagger burned in my grip. The book lay open, its pages fluttering as though alive. And then from outside a scream ripped through the night. Not Emily's. The townsfolk. The creature had turned its wrath on them. I stumbled toward the steps, clutching the dagger and the book. Emily's shoe pressed against my heart. The cellar door rattled as dust fell around me. I knew then, this wasn't just about saving Emily anymore. The whole town was under siege. And the land was demanding its payment. The cellar door banged above me as if a storm were raging on the other side. The screams outside had multiplied. A chorus of terror carried on the night air. My body trembled, but the dagger burned steady in my hand. I climbed the creaking steps, lantern swinging, until I shoved the trapdoor open. The sight that met me stole my breath. The town beyond the ranch glowed in patches of firelight. Buildings shuddered as cracks split through the streets, swallowing fences, wagons, and even entire porches. The church bell tolled madly on its own, though no hands touched it. Shadows writhed across the rooftops, stretching and curling like living things. The whispers were everywhere now, not just in the ranch soil. Blood for blood, blood for blood. They filled the air, thick as smoke, making every breath feel heavy with guilt. I stepped out onto the porch, the dagger gleaming faintly even in the dark. The creature was no longer confined to the pit. It towered at the edge of town, its body built higher, limbs stretching grotesquely, its face a shifting canvas of Daniel, Melissa, and countless others. Its glowing eyes swept over the town like twin lanterns of doom. And with each step it took, the earth groaned. "God help us," someone screamed. "It's coming through the streets." Men fired rifles into the night, bullets sparking against its hide as uselessly as pebbles thrown at a mountain. Women clutched children and ran, but the ground split before them, driving them back. The creature laughed, a sound that was both thunder and a child's giggle. Emily's giggle. I clutched her shoe tighter against my chest, fury rising in me like wildfire. "This ends tonight," I whispered. I hobbled down the steps, cane forgotten. The dagger alone steadied me. The ground quaked, forcing me to my knees. I dragged myself upright again, teeth gritted. My legs weak but my will iron. I moved through the chaos, the townsfolk scattering around me, some staring in horror as I passed. "There she is," a woman shrieked. "It's her fault. She brought this on us," a man shouted. Another voice rose above theirs, raw with rage. "Kill the old witch before she damns us all." Hands grabbed at me, rough and desperate. They pulled at my arms, tore at my clothes, shouting over one another in panic. "Give her to it. Maybe it'll stop if it takes her." The dagger flared in my hand, glowing brighter as if sensing my fear. I swung it wildly, the blade slicing the air. The mob stumbled back, their eyes wide at its light. "Stay back," I roared, my voice breaking like thunder. "If you touch me, it won't save you. This thing doesn't want your blood, it wants mine. And hers." The whispers surged louder as if mocking me. "Blood for blood, the girl, the girl." The crowd scattered again, leaving me standing alone in the middle of the street. My heart hammered against my ribs, my breath ragged. The creature's gaze shifted, locking onto me. It knew. It began to move toward me, each step sinking into the earth with a bone-rattling quake. Buildings trembled, windows shattered. Horses screamed and tore loose from their posts. Its voice rolled like thunder, shaking the air. "Bring the child, Margaret, or we will take her through you." I lifted the dagger high, its glow cutting through the shadows. "If you want her, you'll have to take me first." The whispers turned into a howl, 1,000 voices shrieking together. The creature let out a roar so loud it cracked the bell tower in half. And then it lunged. Its massive arm shot forward, fingers curling like tree roots. I stumbled back, raising the dagger, bracing for the impact. But before its hand reached me, the blade erupted in blinding light. The air cracked like lightning. The creature recoiled with a scream that rattled every window in town. Smoke hissed from the wound where the dagger's light had struck. For the first time it had been hurt. The townsfolk gasped. Some dropped to their knees, crossing themselves. Others cried out in shock. I stared at the glowing dagger, my heart pounding. John had been right. This was the key. The creature staggered, but its eyes burned brighter. It howled, a sound of rage and hunger. "Blood for blood," it bellowed. The ground beneath me split wide, swallowing the street in a jagged canyon. I barely leapt aside, landing hard on the dirt. The dagger slipped from my grasp, skittering across the ground. I crawled desperately, fingers clawing at the soil, as the creature's shadow loomed over me. Its long root-like hand reached down again, closing the distance. I stretched my arm, fingertips grazing the dagger's hilt, and froze, because from behind me, clear and trembling, came a small, terrified voice. "Grandma." I turned, my blood running cold. Standing at the edge of the street, barefoot and pale, was Emily. For a heartbeat, the world stopped moving. All I saw was Emily, my sweet granddaughter, standing barefoot in the dirt, her nightgown torn, her hair tangled with dust. Her little eyes, wide and terrified, locked onto mine. How had she gotten here? She was hundreds of miles away. Or so I thought. "Emily!" I screamed, scrambling to my feet. But before she could move toward me, I saw them. The townsfolk. A group of them huddled behind her, their faces grim, their hands still gripping her shoulders from where they'd dragged her forward. One man spat on the ground. "We gave her to it. Maybe now it'll leave the rest of us alone." My blood boiled. "You cowards!" My voice shook the night. "You dare use a child to bargain with a demon?" They didn't answer. They just backed away, leaving Emily standing alone in the open street as the creature's gaze fixed on her. The monster let out a guttural laugh, its shifting face stretching grotesquely into a mockery of a smile. "The child comes willingly," it hissed, though I saw Emily's little hands trembling, clutching at her gown. I lunged for the dagger, snatching it up just as the creature's shadow loomed over her. "Run to me, Emily," I cried, my heart pounding. She stumbled forward, her bare feet cutting against the jagged dirt. The ground trembled, cracks racing toward her tiny body. I swung the dagger, its glow cutting across the earth, forcing the fissures to stop inches from her toes. Emily sobbed, running into my arms. I pulled her close, pressing her head against my chest, her tiny body shaking with terror. "I've got you," I whispered fiercely. "Nothing will take you while I still breathe." The creature roared, shaking the very sky. Its voice thundered. "Blood for blood. The girl is owed." I lifted the glowing dagger high, shielding Emily with my body. "Then you'll have to go through me first," I shouted. The monster struck again, its arm slamming into the ground beside us, sending dirt flying. The dagger flared, burning the air with light. For a brief moment, the creature reeled back, smoke hissing from its twisted arm. The townsfolk screamed and scattered, some crying for God, others calling me witch. The church bell tolled again, splitting and crashing down into the street in a shower of sparks. Emily clung to me, her voice muffled against my chest. Grandma, I'm scared. I know, baby. I know. My grip on the dagger tightened, the weight of it suddenly unbearable. John's words echoed in my mind. Only blood of the line can wield it. And I understood then. It wasn't just my fight anymore. Emily was bound to this curse as much as I was. The dagger was meant for us both. The creature towered higher, its eyes glowing like hellfire, its voice booming over the chaos. Choose, Margaret. Your blood or hers? Tonight the debt will be paid. The ground split wider, swallowing houses, toppling fences. The air burned with smoke and whispers, the whole town caught between fire and shadow. I looked at Emily, her tear-streaked face staring up at me with trust so pure it cut deeper than any blade. And in that moment I knew. The final choice was coming. The dagger pulsed in my hand, the creature closed in, and the screams of the town rose to the heavens. The land itself waited for my answer. The night had swallowed the town whole. Smoke curled into the sky where houses once stood. The bell tower lay shattered across the street, and the people who had cursed me now screamed for salvation. But I didn't hear them. My focus was only on Emily. Her small hands clutching at my dress, her trembling body pressed against mine. And the monster. It loomed above us, its shifting faces grinning with madness. Daniel's smirk. Melissa's cold glare. My late husband's weary eyes. And worst of all, Emily's own face, distorted and cruel, twisting in its flesh as though mocking me. The whispers rose louder than ever. Blood for blood. The girl. The debt must be paid. The dagger pulsed in my hand, its glow spreading up my arm, filling me with a strength I hadn't known in years. But it also weighed heavy, like it carried the sorrow of every soul this curse had devoured. Emily looked up at me, her eyes wide. Grandma, I'm scared. I kissed her forehead, my lips trembling. I know, baby. But we're going to end this tonight. Together. Her tiny hand brushed the dagger's hilt. The glow flared brighter, wrapping around us both. I understood then. John hadn't meant for me to fight this battle alone. The weapon needed both our bloodlines, 2 generations bound together. The ground split again, this time beneath our feet. I dragged Emily back, the crack stopping inches from us. The creature roared, its breath hot and foul, its massive shadow swallowing us whole. It reached down, fingers like twisted roots, aiming for Emily. No, I screamed, swinging the dagger upward. Light exploded from the blade, slicing through the darkness. The creature's hand recoiled, black smoke pouring from the wound. The townsfolk gasped, some falling to their knees in awe. She's fighting it, one cried. She's holding it back. But the creature only laughed, the sound shaking my bones. You think you can sever what is owed? Foolish woman. The debt is older than your blood, older than your name. The dagger vibrated in my hand, the book's pages fluttering wildly at my feet. My eyes fell on John's handwriting scrawled across the open page. It can be bound, not broken. The binding requires sacrifice, blood freely given. Sacrifice. My throat tightened. I finally understood the true cost. It wasn't enough to wound the creature. Someone had to stay bound to it, sealing it in the earth again. Someone of the bloodline. I looked at Emily, so small, so innocent. Her whole life ahead of her. Then at the dagger, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. The choice tore at me. No. Iwisparat fiarseli. Not her. Never her. The creature sneered, its faces twisting. Then give yourself, Margaret. Bind yourself to me, and the child is spared. Emily clutched my arm. Grandma, don't. Please don't leave me. Tears blurred my vision. I have to, baby. To keep you safe. She shook her head, sobbing. No. We can do it together. You said together. Her words struck deep. Together. The dagger glowed even brighter in her hands, as though answering her plea. I gripped it tighter, then placed her tiny hand over mine on the hilt. Then together it is. We lifted the blade as one. The creature lunged, its maw opening wide, a pit of writhing shadows. The townsfolk screamed and fled, but I held my ground, Emily pressed against my side. We drove the dagger into the earth. Light erupted, brighter than the sun. searing across the street and into the sky. The ground shook violently, swallowing the creature's legs, its torso, dragging it back into the pit. It howled, its many faces writhing, clawing at the light that bound it. The whispers became screams, then cries, then silence. Emily cried out as the dagger's glow wrapped around us both, a chain of fire tethering us to the monster. Pain seared through my chest, my veins burning like molten steel. But I held on, clenching Emily's hand tighter. "Stay strong," I shouted. "Don't let go." The earth roared, collapsing beneath the weight of the curse. The creature thrashed one last time, its face twisting into mine, my own reflection, aged and weary. Then it was gone. The pit slammed shut, dust rising into the air. Silence fell across the town. I collapsed to my knees, the dagger clattering to the ground, its glow fading. Emily knelt beside me, her face streaked with tears but her eyes alive. "Grandma," she whispered, "did we win?" I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. "Yes, baby. We won." The townsfolk emerged slowly, their faces pale, eyes wide with awe and fear. None spoke. They only watched us, the old woman and the child who had faced the curse together. I rose on trembling legs, Emily still in my arms. "This is the lesson you'll all remember," I said, my voice raw but steady. "Greed, betrayal, and cowardice brought this curse on us. But courage, love, and sacrifice broke its hold. You cast me out, but I stood for you anyway. Remember that before you condemn another soul." No one argued. Not one voice rose against me. I turned back to the ranch, Emily's hand tight in mine. The land was scarred, the house still broken, but the whispers were gone. The silence was a blessing. We had ended it. At least for now. As the sun rose the next morning, painting the sky in gold, Emily leaned against me on the porch. "Grandma," she said softly, "do you think it's really over?" I looked at the dagger, now dull and lifeless beside me, then at the land, quiet but scarred. "It's bound," I said. "Not broken. Someday it may call again. But when it does," I kissed her hair, pulling her close, "our family will be ready." And with that, the curse that had haunted generations was silent. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope. And to all of you watching this story unfold, my name is Margaret, speaking to you from Oklahoma at the age of 78. If you've stayed with me through this journey, I thank you. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story like this. Now tell me, from which part of the country are you watching tonight? Because stories like these, about greed, betrayal, and redemption, aren't just mine. They belong to all of us.